Hello everyone! On behalf of the Neuroimaging of Epilepsy Laboratory, the NOEL, welcome to this video tutorial about the use of NOEL texture. I will explain the motivations behind this tool, how to install it on your personal computer, and how to run it. It is very important to understand that this tool is specifically designed to ease the search for type II focal cortical dysplasia, or FCD. It shall not be used for the detection of any other epileptogenic lesions, such as hippocampal sclerosis, heterotopias, or tumors. Moreover, we want to emphasize that the use of this tool in clinical context is not the responsibility of the NOEL, but the sole responsibility of the operator. We also stress that all cases presented in this video are for didactic purposes only and shall not be used in any other context. Before I get any further, you have to make sure that you install Docker on your computer in order to run NOEL texture. I refer you to our documentation website for the detailed steps in the Getting Started, Install Docker section of the website. If you have not done this, pause the video and follow the steps detailed in this section for your operating system, whether it is Windows, macOS, or Linux. To make sure that the whole process is reproducible and predictable, NOEL texture runs inside a container, which is a standardized virtual machine. This means that whether you run this pipeline on a machine running a Linux distribution, a Windows-based machine, or a Mac, the results are going to be exactly the same. You will also need an MRI visualization software. We recommend installing the Ming Toolkit, available on macOS and Linux operating systems, which includes the visualization software Register. Alternatively, you can use the visualization software ITK-Snap, available on all platforms. Further details are given later in the video. Also, if you use a Windows computer, it is essential that your computer has a minimum of 16 GB of RAM. From now on, you need to have Docker installed and running in the background, which you can easily identify with this little whale icon. In my presentation, I will be running the software on a macOS environment. Our first step is to install NOEL texture. To do so, you need to open your terminal. On macOS, the most straightforward way is to use the Spotlight button and type terminal. Then click on the first result entry. Another option is to open a Finder window, go to the Application folder, then select the Utilities subfolder, this one, and search for the terminal application. If you are using a Windows computer, the access to the terminal can be done by clicking on the Windows button. In the search field, type CMD. Finally, click on Command Prompt, which should be the best matching result. If you are using a computer running Linux, we assume you know where you can find the terminal. In order to install NOEL texture, you have to type the following command: docker pull noel mni py noel gui -app semicolon latest, and hit enter. You will see a series of lines showing the states of the different components of the software. These states include waiting, downloading, pulling, and pull complete. The installation is done once all the software components display pull complete. For example, you see this download complete will soon turn into pulling and pull complete. Once Noel Texture is installed, you can go to Docker Desktop, the main Docker window. Select the Images tab, here, this one, which will display a list of all the container images you have downloaded so far. NoelMNI/PyNoel GUI app should be one of them. You will notice that this list gives several information about these images, such as the name and the tag, which is the version of the software. To start the software, click on the little triangle, which is the Run button in the Actions column. It opens a window, Run a new container. Unroll the Optional Settings panel and fill the field's port, host port, with 9999. Then click Run. Congratulations, Noel Texture is now running. To access it, open your favorite browser, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or Edge, and type the following address in the address bar: http://localhost:9999. If everything went well, you should see the same content in the browser than the one you see in the video. The required image format for Noel Textures is the Nifty format. The file extension is NII or NII.gz. Usually, images coming directly from the scanner are in DICOM format. You must convert them to Nifty. The two main conversion options, which work in most cases, are the following: a command line tool called DCM2MNI X, available on GitHub at the following address: github.com/rodenlab/DCM2NIIX. A more traditional software called MRI-CRO-GL, which includes DCM2NIIX and is available on all major platforms, Windows, macOS, and Linux, can be downloaded from the following address: nitrc.org/projects/MRI-CRO-GL. The interface of Noel Texture is divided in different sections. The field Enter Case ID is not mandatory. If you leave it empty, the software will automatically attribute one to your case. The field Upload is where you upload your images in Nifty format. The field Texture Maps is where the results of the process will be available for download once all operations are performed. The field Logs gives you a live update of the processing steps. Your first option to upload a new image is to click in the Upload area. A file browser, similar to the one you use in Microsoft Word to load or save a file, will open, and you can navigate to the location of your files and select them. The second option is to use the drag and drop from your File Explorer window. An important warning here: if you want to upload a T1 weighted and a flare image, you have to select both files simultaneously, this way. You can't upload the T1 weighted image, then upload the flare image later. So here, I just drag and drop both files into the upload section. So you see, the logs section tells me that the process has started. Once the images are uploaded, you just have to wait for the process to go through, which includes the registration of the images to the MNI space, correction of intensity inhomogeneities, skull stripping, tissue segmentation into gray matter, white matter, and CSF, and finally, computation of relative intensity and gradient maps. As these steps are being done, they appear in the log section of the web page. The process will take between 5 and 10 minutes to complete. Sometimes it can last up to 15 minutes. Once the processing is finished, 5 files will be available for download in the texture maps area of the web page. This includes a PDF file allowing you to verify the skull stripping and tissue segmentation accuracy, and 4 images to visualize. An image file ending with T1final.nii, which is a processed T1 weighted image. This means that the T1 weighted image has been corrected for intensity inhomogeneity and registered into the stereotaxic space. An image file ending with T2final.nii, which is the processed FLAIR image, also corrected for intensity inhomogeneity and registered into the stereotaxic space. An image file ending with T1_relative_intensity.nii, which is the relative intensity computed from the T1 weighted image and the tissue segmentation. And an image file ending with T1_gradient_magnitude.nii, which is the gradient image measuring how fast T1 weighted intensities change in a region. Download these results now. And store them in a directory of your choice. It's done. Once images are downloaded and safely stored, you can safely shut down the container running NOEL textures in Docker Desktop by clicking on the Delete button. Let's have a look at the QC report. This PDF file is composed of 2 pages, one for the quality of the skull stripping and one for the quality check of the tissue segmentation. Moreover, I want to insist that you have to be aware of the general orientation of the brain. If you see a misorientation, meaning the brain does not seem to be well aligned or the brain is not in the center of the pictures, then something went wrong with the registration. For skull stripping, you have to be attentive to the extent of the red overlay. It has to fit the brain as precisely as possible. 2 major problems can affect this step, which will have a tremendous effect on the tissue segmentation. The first problem is an understripping, meaning that a significant part of the skull is included in the overlay. The second one is an overstripping, which means that a significant part of the brain is not included in the overlay. For the tissue segmentation, if the skull extraction is accurate and your image is well contrasted, meaning it is easy to distinguish white from gray matter, your segmentation should be accurate. As an example, here is how neuroneous skull stripping might affect the segmentation. The skull is included in the white matter label, a significant part of the white matter is included in the gray matter label, and there might also be a risk that an important part of the gray matter is included into the CSF. If skull stripping and tissue segmentation are properly done, you can safely move to the next step, which is the inspection of the images generated by the processing pipeline. Note that the main factor that affects the results of these processing steps is the quality of the images. In other words, you cannot get reliable texture maps if there are artifacts due to movement or any other problems during the acquisition, such as low contrast or strong image interpolation. Therefore, we strongly recommend the use of the harness protocol. Before you visualize images with register, I remind you that you must install the Ming Toolkit. I refer you to our website for the detailed steps. I also stress that these tools are only available for macOS and Linux. If you are working with a Windows computer, you can move to the following timecode where we cover image visualization using ITK-Snap. To start register, you need to open a terminal and type the following command, register, and you need to give the complete path to your files as a parameter. So in my case, this is going to be the following. And all images are loaded. Once register is open and the images are loaded, you need to do several additional steps. Click on the button Not Synced to enable synchronization across all images. Once clicked, you will notice that the button label will change to Synced. The T1 final, you need to change its color map to gray. And for relative intensity and gradient images, you need to change the intensity color to hot, like this. Now for relative intensity, drag the lower intensity threshold to the right until the border between white and gray matter is well highlighted. Then for the gradient intensity image, drag the higher intensity threshold to the left until the intensity have the brightness you are comfortable with. The next step is to explore the image in all three directions, one after the other. Here, I start by the top of the head on the actual view and move slowly to the bottom, slice by slice. And I really take the time to look for the following signs, which are a low gradient, so a darker color on the gradient image, and a high relative intensity. So here I finish to explore the image in actual view, and I can move to the coronal view, starting with the anterior part of the head. And again, I move slowly, slide by slide, looking for the FCD signs, which I repeat are a lower gradient and a higher relative intensity. Now that I finished the exploration of the coronal view, I can move to the sagittal view. Here, starting from the right and moving slowly to the left. In this first exploration, I didn't find anything visible, but let's start again. We start again from the top of the head, in the actual view, and I move slowly again, taking care of what's going on the image. And during this exploration, it looks like I'm starting to see a possible candidate. Here, for example, in this area, you can see that there is a relatively higher relative intensity, which you don't see symmetrically on the left. And you also notice that the gradient looks much lower compared to the rest of surrounding areas. To confirm, what we can do, we can look at the other views. And it looks like this is also the case here. A higher relative intensity and a lower gradient. And if we go check on the sagittal view, it looks like it confirms our finding. So remember, when you see a finding in one view, whether it is axial, sagittal, or coronal, you need to confirm this finding in all other views. In this section, we will explore the visualization of images using ITK-Snap. Before we start, make sure that you have downloaded and installed the software on your computer. If not, then pause the video and follow the steps described in our website on the section MRI Visualization using ITK-Snap. Once you have ITK-Snap opened, the first step is to open the T1 weighted image. Click on the File menu and select Open Main Image. Once the Open Image box is open, click on the Browse button and navigate your file arborescence to find the T1 weighted image you want to display. Here we want to display the T1 final. Once you have selected the image, click on Next, then click on Finish. Your T1 weighted image is displayed in all three directions: axial, sagittal, and coronal. By holding right-click on your mouse, you can zoom in or out of the image. By holding the mouse wheel, you can move the view on which the mouse is pointed. And you can change the localization of the cross by left-clicking anywhere on any view. You can notice that each view has a little button with a letter in the upper right corner: A for axial, S for sagittal, and C for coronal. If you click on any of these buttons, you can magnify the corresponding view. Clicking back on the button will return the software to its original state with three views. The second step is to open additional images. To do so, click on the File and select Add another image. The procedure is the same as opening the main image. Here we are going to select the flare image, which is t2final.ni. Click Next, and we want to keep it as a separate image so that we are able to look at both images at once. And we click Finish. Now that we've added the flare, we can add again the T1 relative intensity and the gradient. The next step is to change the color map and adjust the intensity scale of the relative intensity and the gradient images. Click on Tools and select Color Map Editor. Go to the Color Map tab, select the T1 relative intensity image on the left, and you can then select Hot in the Select a Color Map selection menu. Repeat this procedure for the gradient image. Once this is done, go to the Contrast tab. If the gradient image is selected, you can move the upper threshold to the left to highlight lower gradient magnitudes. If the relative intensity image is selected, you can move the lower threshold to the right to highlight the transition between gray and white matter. Now everything is ready, and you can click on the Close button. The next step is to explore the images. With ITK-Snap, I recommend to first explore each view, starting with axial, then moving to coronal and sagittal, individually from one end to the other. In this example, I first expand the axial view, move to the top of the head, and then go through each slice slowly using the slider, looking for FCD signs which have higher relative intensity combined with a lower gradient magnitude. Now I just finished exploring the axial view. I can move to the coronal view and then I'll explore the sagittal view. As a basic rule, if you think you found something, you have to confirm it by looking in the two other views and move around to have an accurate picture of this specific area. For example, here, it looks like I may have found something in the axial view. I have a higher relative intensity, especially if you compare it with the other side. So if I move up and down, I can see that there is something very persistent, and also that it comes with a much lower gradient compared to the surrounding. Now, let's say I want to compare it with the sagittal view. Well, you can see that the sagittal view here is not really informing. But if you move around, you will see that that is getting much more convincing. And then also, in this case, if we look at the coronal view, we still have the same signs. So we can confidently say that in this very location, there is an FCD. Now, this is the end of this tutorial. On behalf of the NOEL team, we thank you very much for listening to this video.